A letter arrived at his home, unsigned, no return address. One instruction: kill yourself. The man who received it was a future Nobel Peace Prize laureate. The agency that sent it was federal. The method had a template, and the template was not written for him alone. But the letter is not the worst part. The worst part is that it was filed under a budget line approved by Congress. The stamp on the envelope, the clerk who filed it, the office that sent it, all public funds, all yours. The program was called COINTELPRO. What's inside is not a conspiracy theory. It has 14 volumes of Senate testimony and 2,370 documented operations against American citizens. The Cold War was real. Soviet espionage was real. COINTELPRO started in 1956, targeting actual communist operatives. But the mandate ran out long before the program did. James Earl Ray fired the rifle. I'm not here for that argument. What the declassified documents show is something the conspiracy theory actually undersells. They didn't need a bullet. They built a machine. They started with Soviet spies. They ended with a woman from Iowa who donated money to the wrong organization. The Church Committee documented 2,370 approved operations. Targets: the NAACP, the American Indian Movement, anti-war activists, feminist organizations, professors, journalists, and hundreds of others. Not a single Soviet agent among the heaviest targets. The methods were specific. Agents planted informants inside organizations, sent anonymous letters to spouses alleging affairs, leaked fabricated stories to the press, created fake organizations designed to draw members away from real ones. Each technique had a name. Each had a budget. One documented technique, called bad jacketing, involved planting evidence to make loyal members appear to be informants. The goal was to provoke the organization into destroying itself from within. The Church Committee found cases where this technique led to physical violence against innocent people who were falsely suspected of being traitors. The FBI documented the outcomes. They continued the practice. J. Edgar Hoover, Internal Memo, August 1963. We must mark him now, if we have not done so before, as the most dangerous Negro in America. King had just delivered the March on Washington speech. If you signed an anti-war petition in 1967, would you know whether your name was in this system? You wouldn't. That was the design. The surveillance of Martin Luther King Jr. began in 1962. Wiretaps on his home phone, his office, his hotel rooms. The Bureau monitored his travel schedule, his meeting agendas, his phone calls with other civil rights leaders. They documented his personal relationships. They recorded his private conversations with his wife. One agent was assigned full-time, salaried, taxpayer-funded, to monitor every dimension of his existence. His sole job was producing intelligence on a Baptist minister. The file grew to 17,000 pages. 17,000 pages on a man whose method was marching. The surveillance was not passive. The recordings were not filed and forgotten. They were weaponized. The Bureau used intercepted material to attempt to drive wedges between King and his allies, between King and his funders, between King and his wife. When King checked into a hotel, agents in the field office already knew the room number. Then, October 1964, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. Inside the FBI, this was not recorded as international recognition. It was filed as a threat assessment. A memo was drafted by the third-ranking official in the Bureau. "We must take action to discredit this man. We will not wait any longer." And here is the part no textbook covers the way the documents do. 34 days before the ceremony in Oslo, a package arrived at the King home. Coretta Scott King opened it. Not Martin. Coretta. She heard the tape first. Then she read the letter. The letter, I'll read the words exactly as they appear in the declassified file, said, "King, look into your heart. You know you are a complete fraud and a great liability to all of us Negroes. You are done. There is but one way out for you. You better take it before your filthy, abnormal, fraudulent self is bared to the nation." The final line, "King, there is only one thing left for you to do. You know what it is." This was not a breakdown. This was a deliverable with a tracking number. The man who wrote the authorizing memo, I can name him now, was William Sullivan, Assistant Director of the FBI's Domestic Intelligence Division. The Church Committee Report, Book 3, 1976, confirmed. The operation was approved at the highest levels of the Bureau. The word in the file was neutralize. Sullivan was never charged. He continued to serve in government. The man who authorized a template for psychological destruction of American citizens faced no legal consequences of any kind. And the letter was not unique. Similar packages, recordings, fabricated letters, planted evidence, were sent to targets across the country. Internal guidelines existed. The Church Committee used a specific phrase for what they found: a standardized disruption protocol. A federal agency maintained a template for telling citizens to kill themselves. The letter was the first level. When psychological destruction wasn't enough, the method escalated. Fred Hampton was 21 years old, chairman of the Illinois Black Panther Party. He ran a free breakfast program for children and was building a coalition across racial lines on the south side of Chicago. The FBI classified this as a threat. December 4th, 1969, 4:45 a.m. 14 officers entered his apartment. The floor plan had been provided by FBI informant William O'Neill, Hampton's own head of security. O'Neill confirmed he put secobarbital in Hampton's drink the night before. Hampton never woke up. 2 gunshot wounds to the head at close range. His pregnant fiancée, Deborah Johnson, was in the bed next to him. 82 rounds fired by law enforcement, 1 by the Panthers. The Cook County State's Attorney called it a fierce gun battle. 82-1. An independent investigation later determined that the Panthers' single round was likely discharged reflexively by a dying man. The physical evidence, bullet trajectories, entry points, the condition of the walls, contradicted the official account at every point. Chicago eventually settled a civil lawsuit for $1.85 million, acknowledging what the state's attorney would not. With King, the weapon was psychological. With Hampton, it was ballistic. With Gene Seberg, it was a single line planted in a newspaper. Seberg died in a car in Paris. She was 40. The FBI knew what led to it because they caused it. She donated money to the Black Panther Party. In 1970, the FBI planted a fabricated story in the Los Angeles Times about the father of her unborn child. The story was a lie. The stress contributed to a premature stillbirth. She never recovered. Every year, on the anniversary of the stillbirth, Seberg attempted suicide. The FBI was aware. An internal memo noted that the planted story had achieved its intended effect. The Bureau did not intervene. They documented. She was found dead in her car on a residential street in Paris in September 1979. She had been missing for 10 days. The coroner ruled it a probable suicide. She was 40 years old. The memo authorizing the operation reads, "Bureau feels it would be of interest to locate a discreet Hollywood source to publicize the pregnancy of Jean Seberg." Bureau feels of interest to publicize. The language of a press release. The function of a weapon. 3 methods, 3 outcomes, 1 filing system. And those are only the names we know. Mohammed Kenyatta was a voter registration organizer in Mississippi. The FBI spent 6 years sending fabricated accusations to his employers, his landlords, his neighbors. No charges, no crime alleged. The goal was erasure. It worked because no one was watching. If they did this to a Nobel laureate, a party chairman, an actress, imagine the files on people no one has ever heard of. The ones who lost their jobs and never knew why. The ones whose marriages ended over anonymous letters they never traced back to a field office. The ones who stopped organizing, stopped speaking, stopped showing up, and never connected it to a government program they had no way of knowing existed. The most unsettling thing about these documents is the tone. Memos about destroying a man's marriage formatted like budget reports. Recommend continued monitoring. Propose expanded disruption. Budget allocation. Approved. The language is managerial. The intent is annihilation. And every dollar spent came through the standard congressional appropriations process. Line items that said counterintelligence and domestic security, not psychological warfare against civil rights leaders. And cointelpro was not the only program running. While the FBI targeted civil rights leaders, the CIA ran MK Ultra on unwitting citizens. The same government was running the Tuskegee syphilis study, withholding treatment from black men in Alabama to observe what untreated syphilis does to the human body. The men were told they were receiving free health care. They were receiving observation. That experiment ran from 1932 to 1972. COINTELPRO ran from 1956 to 1971. 15 years of overlap. Same government, same citizens. If it were one program, you could call it an aberration. It was never one program. Watch the sequence, not as dates, but as an evolution of method. 1956, COINTELPRO begins. Target, Communist Party. 1961, expanded, Socialist Workers' Party. 1962, Wiretaps on Martin Luther King, Jr. 1963. Hoover, the most dangerous Negro in America. 7 years to go from spies to pastors. 1964. Suicide letter. 34 days before the Nobel Prize. 1968. King assassinated. Memphis. 1969. Hampton killed in coordinated raid. Chicago. 1970. Seaberg's life destroyed by a planted story. 4 lives, 4 methods, 1 system. 1971. Civilians break into the FBI field office in Media, Pennsylvania. Over 1,000 classified documents stolen, mailed to newspapers. The word cointelpro appears outside the bureau for the first time. 1975. Church Committee investigation. 1976. Final report. 2,370 operations against American citizens. Attorney General Levi restricts FBI domestic activity. 2001. The USA Patriot Act removes most of those restrictions. Today, the FBI uses Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act to conduct warrantless searches on the communications of Black Lives Matter protesters, of journalists, of 19,000 donors to a single congressional campaign. All documented, all legal under current law. 3 weeks ago, April 2026, a FISA court opinion revealed continuing violations by the FBI. Again. The tools have changed. The filing system survives. If you donated to a political campaign this year, your communications may have been searched without a warrant. You would not be told. That is the law as it currently stands. The difference between 1967 and today is not the method, it is the scale. The Church Committee recommended oversight. Congress created committees. The committees meet in classified sessions. The public is not invited. The letter was unsigned. The budget was public. The method was classified. The people who exposed it were not officials. They were not journalists. They were not whistleblowers protected by law. They were burglars. The filing cabinet was not destroyed. It was digitized.